Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Good. Thanks.
Well, are we arriving too early or are they too late?
No. Well, it is early because now it's 7 o'clock here because of the clock change in the States. But no, this is the correct time as far as I know.
Okay.
By the way, I'm reading the code, your code, learning a lot from the work you did with Sam on some services. So it will take me time to have any meaningful things to say about it.
I'm
Hi,
glad
good
it
morning.
helps.
Morning, guys. So let's start. Last week I was still working on the owner tree implementation and added the tail command to on top of existing ISO support of encryption. And regarding to the system owner tree, please go on. Hey Ronan, please go on. Sorry.
Just one comment. I'm reading. I went over this code yesterday, the tail code, and I downloaded everything to my laptop to go over in more details. So it will take me a day or two to go over everything. It seems okay, but I'd really love to go over the details.
Sure. Thank you for reviewing it and try it out. Regarding to system, I think that I do need to mimic the implementation of Butterfly in the sense that we need to track the path, which means the own node, the reference to the own node when going down into the leaf node, so we can split and merge the parent nodes without going back. So that's it. Oh, by the way, I also submit the SMP, the change to this discussion group to remove the condition before adding the SMP puller. Hopefully it could be merged sooner. Trumei.
Yeah, okay. I reversed some bug fix patch to verify the performance, but it seems the following bug fix patch not influence the performance result. Still get the same result, and but I can't get the result I tested in December, so I'm not sure what the reason. And the code is not changed much for the alien install, and so I think I can put it away for some time. And since the alien install is not a high priority, the features works now, and since the classic Ceph OSE also has the worst performance, and I'm not sure if the other Ceph OS code influenced the performance, but the rate is much better.
By the classic OSD has the worst performance.
Yeah, than the previous version I tested.
Oh, I see.
And so the read path is much better, and the write path is much worse. So I think I just put it away for a while, and because the code is not changed much, I just fixed some bugs in the following 3 months. So I'm not sure which code influenced the performance. The performance very different with the result I get in December.
To me, there was a discussion in the last performance meeting about a regression problem in the performance of the OSD, and maybe you should take a look if it is related, if it is the same problem that you're seeing. I seem to remember that they too said they said they had a problem with write and not with read, so it might be related. It was the last meeting.
Oh, okay, I see. Last
when did the discussion happen? It was okay. Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, maybe we can wait some days, then we'll fix it. Yeah, but the previous version I tested in the December, the read path is not very better, but this time it is very better for read. So I asked Shihan has already set up the alien blue star. I asked him for help me to verify if he get the same test result as mine. So yeah, that's it for the test performance testing. And I'm reading the C star code. I have a question about the transaction. So the transaction here means the object store transaction or the transaction we defined in our header file.
The second one. It means the block level transaction.
The transaction we defined by ourselves, right? Not object store transaction.
That's right. Something else will have to do that. There will be a layer above that does the translation. In fact, some of that code exists, but yeah.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Hey, Ronan.
I'm working on scrubbing, going over the code, and since yesterday I have a Lucidchart license, I'm I'm creating a diagram of the exact state charts for scrubbing. I hope to serve as documentation and to make sure that I understand everything. I hope to finish this in a day or two. And Sam, thanks for the answer yesterday.
Sure.
I'm going over code and PRs, sometimes without commenting. That's for me.
All right, just that comment probably could use the data to write the you use ASCII to write the to write the diagram.
There actually used to be an ASCII diagram of it. It's a completely linear state chart, or at least the simple one.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw it. It's there. I think you wrote it. There is a list of states, but what I wanted to see is the exact conditions. If I'm to do the same
That's
for
fine.
Crimson, I wanted to see the exact events and transitions that are part of this.
Yeah, that's all
And
right.
by
I think what we're saying, it should be
Okay.
it should be reflected back into the source code, because most people won't be able to open a lucid chart diagram. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand. We do have the RST as part of the documentation.
Yeah,
I think
just as long as it's rendered
might be
into
a-
something that people can open. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Okay.
Dan?
After I show it to you and
Sorry.
everybody okay the diagram, I'll translate it into something more convenient.
I took another pass over the way the cached extent interface works and actually created the concrete types for the LBA tree and the logical extents. So logical extent in, I want to say, what do I call it? Transaction manager.h, that's what you want to inherit from for your extents. You can look at the way I've used it in the LBA tree, but it's a lot of the, I'm currently writing that code, so it's a little sparse right now. But Yingzhen, I think, was asking last week about how to provide the buffer list and how to interpret it. There are methods now for that, or interface methods that you're intended to implement, and that with comments at least indicating what I sort of expect them to do eventually. And I think you can see the code where it pulls the delta out of each extent during transaction commit. So you can see that code too.
Okay.
For what it's worth.
Thank you, Sam. Xuehan.
Last week I was debugging the pglog-based recovery code, and during which I found two other issues, both of which are not caused by the pglog-based recovery code, but they need to be first fixed before we can really start debugging the recovery code. So I'm working on those two issues, and one of them is solved, and the other is under modification. And I think today I've set up my alien store environment, and I think I'll first help Trume do the FIO test, and then I continue with the pglog-based recovery work. And that's all for me.
That's good to hear.
Regarding to the two issues, there are issues in Crimson OSD instead of in classic counterparts, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, thank you. So they are both under review, right? Pending on review.
Sorry.
So both of the fixed are pending on review, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Yinxin?
Hello. Yeah. A recent issue from Xuehan makes me to think to modify connection close interface to return void because it has risk to cause deadlock. And there's no clear reason why we need to wait for a connection closed when we have messenger shut down for memory safety. Yeah. Last week I looked at the Google B tree that current Kafus implementation has referencing it. There are many useful tricks about memory management and templates, but the implementation will be very differently because it is not a B+ tree. And we will have variable-sized keys and most probably, I think it will be hashed to a fixed sized key for indexing performance, but we will still deal with hash collisions. And I'm not very sure about the parent pointer implementation. Sam?
Sorry, what do you mean by what do you mean by an index? I think that's what I'm confused about.
I mean the internal, the B plus tree internal nodes index. If they are also variable sized keys, the performance can be hurt.
Not. The internal nodes are not the size of internal. The elements in internal nodes are not fixed sized.
Wait, that's not true. What do you mean? No, hang on a sec. Both H objects and OMAP keys are variable size.
But
so what do you mean by fixed size?
I think the internal nodes, the keys of internal nodes will be the hashed object ID. So they should be fixed size, right?
You mean you just want to take the 32-bit key?
Yes.
That worries me. For one thing, it won't. That trick will not work for OMAP keys first, because they don't sort that, right?
But I don't think we will be using B tree for implementing OMAP trees. They will be implemented using the radix tree.
I don't think that's true. No. If you're going to do a radix tree, it will be the other way around, right? So a radix tree benefits from fixed size keys with a uniform distribution. That's a description of O-nodes, at least the 32-bit component. For OMAP keys, you have no control whatsoever over the length of the key. You don't have any control over how long the prefixes are. You don't have any control over the distribution either. They could all have the same prefix, for instance.
So I think that's why we are going to implement the OMAP tree using radix tree, right?
I'm saying all of those things I just said are very, very bad for radix trees. So no, I think the OMAP tree is almost certainly a B tree. The O-node tree could conceivably be a radix tree, but you'd have to do something to deal with collisions, and you can't assume there won't be very many of them. Because remember, snapshots are collisions, and people can have a lot of snapshots of a particular object. So if I were you, I wouldn't count on that.
Oh, so we don't take the snap ID into consideration when we do the hash. Oh yes, that's true.
We do not. We can't, right? Because it must be the case that two snapshots sort next to each other in B tree states.
Yes, probably should.
No, Kifu, if you include the snap ID in the hash, then the hash would be wildly different for two different snapshots of the same object. They wouldn't even necessarily be in the same PG.
Right.
Yeah, I think you need to treat them as a variably sized, or as a tuple with variably sized elements.
That complicates the implementation a lot, and the performance as the Yingxin puts it. At least we need to think it hard to come up with some tricks to improve the performance when indexing, when doing lookup at least.
Well, remember, the B tree is the index. Let's be clear. Like, you're writing an index. That's what this is.
Yes, I mean to do the index in the index to
store the keys.
So
the most common
something like that.
The most common trick in B trees, if you're trying to avoid an explosion of space, is to do prefix compression, right? If you know all of the keys in a particular node start with the same prefix, you write the encoding so that that prefix is in the beginning of the node, and then you don't repeat it for the rest of the node. Tricks like that, but that's a little tougher with the sort of uninterpreted tuple concept. So you'll have to think about how you want to implement that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you guys.
The LBA tree is comparatively simple. I actually do have fixed size trees or fixed size keys. I can do pretty straightforward stuff. It's still taking forever because it's complicated. But my suggestion actually is that you consider it as an uninterpreted string sequence. We're not going to want to do that in the long term.
Could you say it again? I missed
In the
your last
very
words.
short term, if you could come up with a byte encoding of the H object that is both directly sortable and easy to interpret into the H object.
Yeah, could you mute?
You,
It's a lot of noise from your mic.
Ah, sorry.
No
I
worries.
can barely hear what Sam is saying. Thank you.
So if you think about what we currently do with RoxyDB, we create strings out of the H object that have the same sorting properties as H objects themselves. That is, it just happens to be the case that string sorting gives the same ordering that H object sorting currently does. You can do something similar with a not necessarily printable byte encoding and use some trickery to ensure that, to ensure that you can quickly interpret it without it being expensive to decode. But I think ultimately what you're looking at is a string, albeit a string with some rules, but a string. Like you always know the first however many bytes are going to be the hash. You always know there are some bytes towards the end that are the snap ID. So maybe you can exploit that somehow. But I think what you have is a string. You can get really clever. You can design like a really bespoke structure that expects to spend, let's say it starts with a radix tree for the hash, and then devolves into a B tree for the string components. That might work. See what I mean? Because you expect the hashes to be well distributed, but you don't expect the strings to be.
Yes, probably I could come up with some combination of a hash and internal indexing, something like what ext4 is doing,
ext4 is cheating. They don't have to list things in lexicographic order. We do. Or they're not cheating. With POSIX, it doesn't require them to list elements in lexicographic order. So Butterfest is the same thing. It hashes things 128 bits and then does B trees based on that, right? That works for them because if you put 10 files into a directory, you don't have control over what order they come out in. The only thing you have control over is that you can page it, right?
And why do we need this? Why must we have this order?
Well, you're looking right at it. You're working on the scrub code. The scrub code relies very heavily on being able to iterate in order efficiently. Because when you're iterating through the space and all of the OSDs, objects need to come out in the same order. And you don't want to be doing, you don't, for instance, want to have to read the entire OSD store to find the next H object for a PG. Same with backfill. Backfill relies really heavily on being able to iterate in order also.
Do I need them in order? I don't care which H object is the next that comes up.
No, you don't care. It's just that all of the OSDs have to produce them in the same order, and it's encoded into the Librettos API.
Yes,
Librettos
it
itself
should be
has
ordered
a
in the
pool listing function.
Same order.
Librettos has a pool listing order that does guarantee ordering.
Okay.
So let's say that hypothetically it might be possible to get away from this, but other components are simpler because the OSD eats this complexity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In exchange for this, other components get to assume that objects will come out in order, and the OSDs get to do recovery more quickly. I mean, it's comparatively very difficult to get, like, let's say you have two different collections of unsorted objects, possibly different versions. How do you find out whether two different OSDs have the same collection of objects if they don't come out in the same order? And they can't fit in memory. You have to first select bins, then you have to sort in the bins, then you have to compare the bins across OSDs. It's a massive compare and sort problem. By contrast, if you know they come out in the same order on each OSD, it's a completely linear time problem, fits in memory, no biggie.
Yeah. Otherwise, we need to order it in memory first.
Which we can't do because you can't, in general, fit the contents of a PG in memory. Sometimes you can, but not usually. And remember, anything that requires a lot of memory necessarily makes your cache less efficient. We don't like that. Okay, so in other words, yeah, it's important that the store the O nodes in order because a lot of stuff relies on it. So the question is, how do we efficiently build an index of H objects? That's the tricky part.
Yeah, I need to rethink about it. And that's more difficult than I expected.
There's some other stuff working against this too. We don't really expect objects that truly collide. We don't expect them to have the same name or even remotely related names. We do expect things that have two snapshots of the same object to differ only in the snapshot field, though. So you can do something like use a run length encoding deal where the first time you encounter a particular hash, you include the hash in the key, but the next time you see that hash, you omit it, and so on, giving you a sort of a basic, what's that encoding? I'm forgetting. Basic prefix save encoding. I'm forgetting the name for it. And that sort of, actually, you know what? That's a pretty good medium. I would go ahead and try that. That basically gives you prefix compression for free. It's not exactly optimal because adjacent nodes under the same great-grandparent probably share the same keys. But even then, you can probably finesse it.
Oh, really?
No, yeah, you can totally finesse it.
I don't think so. Because the hashing is pretty much random.
No, hashing is random, but let's say you're far enough down the tree so that you're just talking about collisions on a particular hash. You might have multiple sibling nodes that have the same hash, that have keys that have the same hash. But it's true in general, right? You might have adjacent keys that have the same hash, namespace, name, but differ only in the snapshot, in which case you don't have to include any of that previous stuff, just the snapshot. You know what? I'll write something up tomorrow and send you an email. I think this is actually tolerable.
And you digest it offline.
Yeah. It may not work either, so I'll let you know either way.
Yes, but it could be inspiration from my point of view. Any questions?
I have one question. It seems that our recordings are not sharing on the YouTube anymore. Are the community still planning on sharing those meeting recordings?
Oh, probably someone has to actually do it. Download.
Yeah, I think I will ping my parents on it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I'll copy you. I have you in the loop to see how it goes up. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you, Shahan.
Yeah, I'm also a little confused about the design details related to our transaction isolation. This week I'm also looking at the related concepts, and I think I will send out some email to ask it later.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you.
And one more comment. Please, when you write new code, everybody, do include the function header comments, comments, explaining
I will amend my code.
What is the scenario? Yeah. Okay. It's everybody. It's so missing from our code. Thanks.
Thank you for bringing this up, Brendan. Anything else? Okay, thank you guys, and talk to you later. See you next week.
See you.
See you, and stay healthy.
Have a good day and have a good night. You too.
Later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.